All right, I apologize for that. I guess I didn't have any speech there. We exited Nucor and Chesapeake here. We exited both of them. Let me show you why. The email text just went out. Nucor here is the one, we could hold it, right? I mean, low volume, sell off, everything else. But pushing into a trend rider, okay, trend rider, explosive gains, pulling back, closing below the upper Bollinger Band. With tomorrow being the last trading day of the year, and potentially some end of year selling, we typically will see that. I'd rather get out of Nucor here, look to pick it up around 53 if and when it does pull back there. I think the risk of holding it with those options, the high delta on there, the risk of holding that is very strong. And so I'm taking off Nucor. We also took off Chesapeake. Chesapeake just simply because of the breakdown. Had Vibe, Trend Rider, never got really going. And today, after being up, reversed lower. Again, not a whole lot of volume there, but simply from a principal standpoint with the Vibe Trend Rider, pull that off for a small loss and move on. Kind of free us up to enter some other things here. So we pulled off Chesapeake and Nucor. We had a little bit of about the same loss as we had gain for both of those there. Okay, Boeing. Okay, Boeing here. Here's this, and now this one's a little different circumstance, right? Vibe Trend Rider. We need to be a little bit more rigid and exacting with just following those. Boeing, our risk is within the challenge. Okay, it is the 3K challenge, and we don't necessarily have to kind of stick with that. It is breaking the 7. It's breaking the 7 on very, very light volume. It's coming back into a very strong support level from a lot of indications from our trend line, from our volumes. We have some strong support in this area. Can it go back down to 134? It absolutely can. Do we have the vote here on Friday for Boeing? Absolutely. But with where we are on the challenge, okay, and kind of going through the different stocks out there in the market and what's out there, I still like Boeing a lot. The action, yes, it may go down a little bit more, but we still have time. We're in the money. We looked earlier today. The option's not going to erode very much. So there are a million things of reasons why we could say, well, it's breaking the 7. Let's get out. But this kind of comes down to a little bit of a gut feel call, and I'm going to hold on to Boeing here and keep Boeing. My concern with it is, do we get a little more end of year selling? Do we see this come down to 134? Yeah, we may, but I'm pretty comfortable that a week or two into January, we're going to see this thing at least back into the 137 area. So I'm not too concerned there. There's not a whole lot of other stuff I really like overall, okay, as far as new entries, but gonna hold on to Boeing. Look, Boeing here from Jay Wood. Is that a falling 5 methods? Yeah, I mean you could make that argument here. I mean there's a lot of you could make in the short term a lot of bearish arguments here on Boeing. You can make a lot of bearish arguments. The chances with the way this is forming in the short term is that it will go lower before higher. That is what the odds are saying on Boeing. Coming into a strong support level. This is where our volumes have kind of come in this 135, 136 area. Again, like I said, this is a gut feel. I'm not, if you're not willing to hold it, please don't. Okay, I'm not going to argue with anybody who wants to get out. AK, I fully agree with you. I would. If the challenge had more capital, I would actually look to be adding here to Boeing and overall look to be adding. In fact, tomorrow, we see even a little bit more pullback in the market. We will be going and buying some things that have pulled back, that are still in vibe uptrends. I like being a buyer heading into the front end of the year here. The vote here for Boeing and the union, I don't expect that it has a major impact other than, okay, it's an event, it's done, don't have to worry about it, move on, and allows to bring a little calm into the stock here. Okay, so again, out of Nucor, out of Chesapeake, holding Boeing here for the challenge. Okay, Qualcomm. A little pullback here, about 22 cents. Not able to break above 74 overall. Again, Qualcomm's one of those where if you like to set up auto trades, this is one where you can just kind of put in and say, hey, Qualcomm breaks 74, buy me in. Okay, Qualcomm breaks 74, buy me in. Until then, if you're looking to kind of pick up, yeah, fine. You pick it up on small little dips here. It had some good support here around the 73.25 area. And so anywhere in this area, I like being a buyer here of Qualcomm. The action is kind of like many other things in the market, just low volume, slow bleed, very orderly. We're not seeing aggressive selling come in. There is a risk. We do see that tomorrow, last day of the year, especially into the last hour. Google here, I priced out some options, looked at potentially buying some Google, but Google has a history of going down on the last day of the year, especially even the last hour of the year. Kind of come down here to this 1110 area, lower Bollinger on the hourly, 7-day moving average on the daily, down just slightly here today, about 0.7%, but if this were any other day, I would look to potentially buy into Google. But given the last day of the year coming tomorrow, I don't want to set up anything that in the real short term, would hurt. And so not going to do that. We do have a little strength coming into things like Allstate. Allstate was kind of one of the winners this morning, and kind of faded down most of the rest of the day. Seeing a little bit of a bid come into the close here. This has had some very bullish consolidations. Tried to break down on a trend rider bear, popped back up on very strong volume, and with the Bollingers flat, any pierce of the upper Bollinger, we could be off and running into a nice trend rider bull signal. Allstate kind of started to hit my radar here today as a potential buy, but again, I still think it's just a little bit early. Tesoro, I mentioned to you earlier, I'd gotten into a little bit of a spread on Tesoro. Still in a bullish continuation. The risk on Tesoro here is a pullback into the 55, even 54 area before being ready to bounce and move higher. If it does pull back into the 54 area, we'll have to kind of see what the volumes are on the bounce to be able to say, okay, you know what, we're pretty comfortable. Tesoro's going to a new high. Until then, any break above 58.5, Tesoro's going higher. Break above 58.5 is kind of that no-brainer, kind of like Qualcomm. Qualcomm above 74, Tesoro above 58.5. It'd be ready to go. Now, interestingly, Valero has outperformed Tesoro here today. Also, Western Refining, whose options aren't nearly as good, has outperformed Tesoro here today. So we are seeing a little bit more strength come into the Valero. Now I went earlier today. I picked up a couple calls on Valero to kind of go with Tesoro. Again, a partial position, but just some January 47s. They're not incredibly cheap, but they're not incredibly expensive. Again, just building a little bit of a refiner position. I thought about pulling Boeing off and getting into Valero for the challenge. I still like Boeing a little bit better overall for the challenge here where it's at. So decided to keep that. Look, other than that, most everything else in the market, here's Johnson & Johnson. Can you say it broke down? Sure. but it's right there at the 7, right there, still in this consolidation period. Costco with the same chart. Okay, had some nice strength this morning. It's one of those where if the market would have strengthened here today, we could have seen Costco well over 120. Had some better morning action today than it has other mornings. But given the end of the year, we're still seeing some of the selling come in. Again, consolidating. Bank of America, same type of thing. Yes, breaking the 7 from a consolidation standpoint. What does this do? This basically says, okay, on a break back above the 7, you got an opportunity to play it higher. Okay, are there things to potentially sell? Well, most of the selling has been kind of revolving around stocks that are in strong uptrends with a little bit of profit taking come in, or stocks that have been bleeding a little bit and kind of getting a little bit on the exhaustive side. Apple today has bounced off of its lows here. A nice bounce off of its lows. I would have liked to see a little bit more exaggeration to the downside, but breaking back above the 7-hour moving average for the first time since starting this decline. I still think, yes, it's probably a little bit early on Apple, but a small gap up in the morning, or even if Apple were able to kind of bleed down in maybe into 550 come the close yesterday, I'd be willing to bottom pick Apple down here around 550, simply with the new year coming aboard and picking that back up again at the lower Bollinger. What tends to happen from an hourly standpoint on these is you tend to get the move back above the 7. The next move lower tends to go back again down to the lower Bollinger, but then the next move higher will go up to the 20-hour. So that would be typical action. Are we going to get that? We'll see. But I would sell Boeing to buy Apple at 550. Okay. Yeah, Morgan Stanley here. Morgan Stanley, this is a chart very similar, to something like Chesapeake. We're getting some of these, even on an hourly basis, starting to break down, starting to break, key support levels. And are they changing their overall trend? No, they're not changing their overall trend, but this is very much like Chesapeake here today, right? Very, very, very similar. And it's one of those things. If you're looking at holding it into the new year, I can't argue with holding it. The risk here is just a little bit of flushing action heading into tomorrow, last day of the year, especially with some of the technicals weakening. We may see a little bit more intensified selling action, again, but that would be the risk there. VRX, again, you're dealing pharmaceutical, right? I mean, you're talking trend rider, you're talking major breakout, you're talking, all systems go for the bulls here on VRX, and nothing really to change that. Some decent volume. Is it topping? This is something, it's setting a brand new 52-week high today. Generally, stocks that set brand new 52-week highs, they generally will go up. Okay. Celgene, which we looked at earlier last week, or at the end of last week, breaking back above the 7 in a nice little bullish consolidation pattern here. Low volumes on this bullish consolidation. This is one I wouldn't be surprised if we see a VRX type of day for Celgene here in the near future. Celgene is one that, market weak, market down a little bit. I would love to be in a position to be a buyer of Celgene kind of into the end of the day tomorrow. Okay. Just got an email here asking me if I'm bearish now on the steel stocks. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do we have some potentially bearish action today? Yeah. U.S. Steel is reversed. AKS shot up to 850 and has reversed down. We have some short-term warning signs, okay, of potential danger in the waters, but I don't think it's not anything to erase the overall bullishness. It's just kind of a short-term pullback here, CLF and some of the others, and I think it has more to do with end of year than it has to do with that sector breaking down or weakening. Dry ships. Was asked today where I'd want to be a buyer of dry ships. These types of stocks, they basically go parabolic. Uh, they will pull back hard. They will pull back aggressive. So far, we're seeing that with dry ships. One of the things when these types of stocks pull back that has worked for me in the past is a down three. Okay, so we get kind of the reversal day where it pulls back, right? Okay, right, pulls back. Then we get the next day where it kind of just gets beat up, goes down, and pulls back. Then we tend to get a third day where in the morning of that third day the stock is weaker. Sometimes you'll start to see rally come in right then. Sometimes you'll still get a little bit more bleeding, but I find the third day offers a much better entry into something like this to be able to play a snapback. And then it's a matter of gauging the snapback to say, all right, do I want to hold this thing for a new high or am I just playing the snapback? So dry ships would be one tomorrow morning. If we see this thing down, in the $4 area, I'd be very tempted to go pick some up. And that goes for most of the shippers, like Free. Free breaks below $2 tomorrow morning on that weakness. I'd be very tempted to look at buying that after kind of the 3 down days. Here on Free, you kind of see a little example of what I'm talking about. We get the black candle, right? The sign of potentially at the top. The next day a red candle. The next day we gap down and go lower. Now this one turns around and bounces pretty quickly, but kind of that whole idea of a 3-day sell-off, okay, where you get it, where you get the 1 day, the second day is the bleed like we have today, and then third day, gap down weakness in the morning becomes buyable. SPM, I did. I said I would buy calls at Apple around 550. Absolutely, I would. I priced them out today. I wasn't too enamored with the prices on Apple. They're not expensive, but they're not, dirt cheap. They set up for some decent spreads where they are right now. But at 550, I would be a lot more tempted there. General Electric, this is one where General Electric basically, if you don't want to follow economic indicators around the world, you don't care about employment, manufacturing, jobs, housing. You say, I don't even want to deal with all that stuff. You just bring up GE. Okay, and GE tells you what's going on with the economic data, the overall trend of the economic data. And GE tells you what the data has been like, and it continues to be strong. And I'd like GE to continue to go higher. I do think the data continues to strengthen. We may have a little bit of a dip here, come February, March, on what some of the data looks like, but the upward trend on GE continues. It's pretty much traded flat the last about 48 hours, with some of the low volume. But GE, I would just simply play with the 7, as long as it holds the 7, continue to ride it higher. Yeah, Kohl's, nice signal the other day, light volume, trend rider. Again, this is very much like, Chesapeake. You're dealing with a trend rider and a vibe bull in the midst of an earnings sell-off, right? Kohl's is the same thing, the exact same chart. Okay, it's very bullish overall. I do think Kohl's goes higher. Your risk is that, a day like Chesapeake where some strong selling can come in at any moment given, this aspect of the gap down there. Martin, Tesla. Yeah, Tesla here, above 150, still pretty good. We talked about it, throughout this bounce right in here as they're kind of getting some China, going to be kind of expanding into China and everything. Look, the valuations on Tesla are really rich. For me to get into Tesla, I need an exact entry. We played it briefly right through here, made a little money there, but it needs to be pretty exact for me to get into Tesla. I don't see that right here. We're talking about a strong drop, from 190 to 120. Now we've retraced. Okay, Tesla is now in the retracement. To see this thing roll over, even if the market's bullish, to see this thing roll over and go set a new short-term low is definitely in the cards of the pattern. There's not been a lot of volume here. Is that seasonal? Maybe. Above 160, again, you still have a little bit of that concern, but, it's just not in a position where I think the risk reward makes a whole lot of sense here on Tesla. Okay. Yeah, AK Gold flushing tomorrow. It's flushing today, right? Um, Gold, the GDX breaking down here, down about 2%. We talked about this morning. Um, Silver, okay, silver with a breakdown here on the gap lower. I do think these things go lower. Anything can happen tomorrow, last day of the year. But interestingly enough, is they're breaking down as the U.S. dollar continues to go down. The typical correlation has been dollar down, euro up, gold and silver up. And this has really changed. Uh, really kind of since Bernanke testified in front of Congress, was talking about tapering and things like that, where we have actually seen the dollar and gold both going on a downward trend. Okay. I do think gold goes lower. I priced it out here today. They're not bad. It's not bad. I'd rather short GDX than short gold itself. But, GDX, the one thing you have to take into account, the Bollingers are contracting dramatically. And so to kind of just consolidate for a few days would not be out of the realm of possibilities here. Okay. All right, so for the vibe, we are out of Chesapeake and we are out of Nucor. Okay, we're out of both of these here. Both of them simply for just pure technical reasons, and that's all. Chesapeake breaking the 7. Okay, we're playing the vibe. Breaks the 7, we're out. And then we have Nucor, which was a vibe entry, turned into a trend rider, and now is closing off of the upper Bollinger Bands. Okay, with it closing off the upper Bollinger Bands, the risk of further pullback is elevated. Take our profit and just look for a better entry. That's all. If Nucor, this was isolated to Nucor, I wouldn't be as concerned about it, but it's not. We have U.S. Steel, AKS, kind of doing similar type of reversals here today. Even we get into like the CLF. The CLF not being able to hold its gains, even some of the coal names not really holding their gains here today, just makes me concerned that we get a pullback tomorrow. I think a strong pullback, a 2-3% pullback tomorrow would be very, very viable in this space, but I didn't want to hold that risk here for Nucor with it closing off the upper Bollinger. Now you say, well, Boeing is doing the same thing, right? Well, yeah, but Boeing's in the context of the challenge. Okay, Boeing is in the context of the challenge. This is a matter of kind of risk reward and where we go with the challenge. I think Boeing has one of those $5-6 moves in it to the upside. It may go down to 135, 134 first, but at this point for the challenge, where it's kind of bled down to, I don't think it will bleed enough to kind of knock us out of the challenge. At the same time, I think the reward potential is good enough to kind of really put us in a good place after kind of the first week of January there. Okay. Yeah, AK. You're right. The weeklies on GDX, they don't seem too bad. They don't seem too bad overall. I don't think they're fantastic having traded them, but you do have to take into account that Wednesday is closed. So some of that time decay from Wednesday will actually start to hit tomorrow on the GDX there. Okay. A few other things here I think are potentially worth noting. Caterpillar. Okay. Caterpillar has been essentially a dog of the Dow. Okay, it has pretty much lagged all year. It's been one of the underperformers, one of the worst performing stocks out there. There is this idea, and I'll talk about it further tomorrow, of if in every year you take the top 5 Dow performers from the year prior and the top 5 underperformers from the year prior, and you buy both of them, both those groups, you tend to outperform the market. And statistically, that is the case. Okay, but that's an investing thing. So from a trading standpoint, I want to see, okay, which stocks have been the dogs, which have been the laggards. Caterpillar, IBM, and both of these over the last 3 weeks have seen a lot of money come in, a lot of nice bounces coming into them. They've both lagged on an earnings front overall, but they're starting to establish some technical changes here. With Caterpillar and IBM, I think they're really nice to take a look at on any little pullback tomorrow, even into the first week here of January. You'll also notice something like Deere, kind of, it's outperformed Caterpillar a little bit, but Deere kind of doing that same thing. And it is as some of these companies have started to announce a little bit of improvement in earnings. And I think there'll be really nice plays for January, February here in regards to IBM and Caterpillar, and ones that may be even worth holding over earnings as we kind of hit those in January. Okay. Yeah, the pound. Yeah, the FXB. The Britain came out, what was it, last week, and basically said a continued rise in the pound threatens the economic recovery of Britain. Okay, the FXB, the pound has continued to go higher. In regards to currency, I'm not a huge fan of the trend rider. Okay, I know this isn't a trend rider right now, but it's not an incredibly accurate system when it comes to forex, when it comes to currency. Okay. I get nervous. I get nervous when a country starts to say things like that, starts to talk about their currency in the fact that it's going the wrong way. Okay. Why? Well, take a look here at the yen. Let me just pull it up on a weekly basis. Japan back in 2012, okay, even in 2011, they're talking the yen is too high. We have to take measures to weaken the yen. It threatens our economic recovery. The high yen hurts. It didn't pull back on all those comments, right? But Japan started here in 2011 to enact policies to deliberately manipulate their currency lower. They continued these in 2012. They've recently pulled a few of them off, they say, but the price action suggests otherwise. And what they've created is pretty much an avalanche downhill in regards to the yen. So, yes, all signs are bullish here on the pound. Okay, they are bullish. The pound to go up to 166, even up to 167. You could see, especially if the economic data continues to improve. But that makes me nervous when I start hearing some of those things that came out here in regards to the British pound and what they were saying over there. An interesting currency pair. I know the pair has been going the other way, but for those of you trading currency, is to look at the pound and the euro. I know it's not a real popular combo to trade, but essentially getting short the pound and long the euro will buffer some of that economic risk, and as far as kind of a long-term currency trend that we may see into 2014 here. Okay. Alrighty, so again, out of Nucor, out of Chesapeake, as they broke their Vive and their trend rider aspects. We're still in Boeing. Yes, did Boeing technically break the 7 here today? It did, absolutely did. It's down 0.8% here today. Still in an overall bullish consolidation. This is one of those where with the challenge, I have to admit this is a little gut feel coming in here as far as holding Boeing. That, and as I look at other things, I don't see anything I like better, and I still want to be exposed on the long side. Okay. Things that I would like better: Apple at 550 and Tesoro at 58.5. or Tesoro at 54. Valero, which I mentioned I got a little bit into today. I thought about doing that for the challenge, switching from Boeing into Valero, but I think it's just kind of apples to apples at this point. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for hopping on. We'll continue with our technical analysis training tomorrow. We'll also, the one thing with being out of Chesapeake, Newport, and Nucor, I will be looking aggressively tomorrow to buy sell-offs. Anything weak and selling off and hitting a price target that I've been looking at, I will be looking at buying aggressively as we head into the new year here. All right. Thanks for hopping on, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.